The first thing he senses is cold, a chill that has absolutely nothing to do with the weather, and everything to do with the realization that the body pressing against it is no longer breathing the way a living body should. Somewhere far above him, a man is shouting in a voice that keeps cracking apart while a little girl wails, and the wet sound of a palm pressing down repeatedly on a child's chest keeps rhythm with both of them. He drifts inside that darkness for what feels like an eternity until a completely different memory begins to push itself up through the dark, his own past from a place that is not here. He had been crossing a busy street on his way to register at Jinling University. The massive semi-trailer had come around the corner much faster than anything that heavy should be able to move, and the final thing he saw was the front grille in a flash of bright orange paint. So is he dead? He asked himself dryly, almost without surprise. The truck had hit him at nearly 80 kilometers an hour. There was no way to survive that kind of impact. He reflects on the brief life he built and how easily it can be summed up. He was an orphan, adopted by a couple who were kind to him, until they had a biological son, after which he became just another extra mouth at their dining table, never beaten, never thrown out, only quietly subtracted from the family equations. He did not hate them. They had not abandoned him a second time. They kept him fed, they paid for his school, so he had repaid them by working hard. He secured first place in his class from primary school onward, and achieved the third highest score in the entire county on his college entrance exams, earning admission to Jinling University. Yet, on the way to start his new life, a runaway truck snatched everything he built. Talk about terrible luck. He feels some regret, but also a faint sense of relief. There was no one in this world for whom his death would mean anything more than an empty chair at a holiday dinner. He's simply never possessed enough to actually lose, while he is accepting all of this. Frantic voices begin to call out to him through the dark. Several voices, both familiar and alien, pull at a deeply buried emotional chord he was sure did not exist. A buzzing fades from his ears, replaced by a man crying out for Gallant, his child, to wake up. He hears a little girl scream that her brother does not want her anymore. He feels hands desperately shaking him and pressing on his chest, alongside the burning heavy weight of sea water trapped deep inside his throat and lungs. He tries to make a sound, but instead expels a massive rush of seawater onto the rocks, and reality rushes back into his consciousness through that single, painful heave. Light noise, the scratchy weight of a heavy wool cloak, the sharp smell of brine and wet stone. He opens his eyes. He sees men clad in black and gray wool, with western faces and long hair, nailing around him, intense anxiety and overwhelming joy clashing across their features. He sees rocky beaches, jagged reefs, and the retreating edge of a cold tide that very nearly swallowed him alive. A lord wearing a heavy cloak pulls him close, and warm tears fall instantly onto his wet hair. A small blonde girl of 4 years throws herself at his arm, sobbing without a shred of pride into the wet fabric of his sleeve. Then, like a massive tide of its own, a second rush of memory floods up from a place deeper than his own thoughts, settling down directly inside him. These are the memories of a boy named Gallant Tarth, eldest son of House Tarth, of Evenfall Hall on the island of Tarth, an 8-year-old child who had just heard a fisher boy speak of a faint cyan and orange shimmer in a sea cave at Morn's Point, and of the boy who was reckless and proud, reckless enough to dive into rising waters in pursuit of a legendary sword. He has transmigrated. The realization lands quietly, with very little of the noise one would expect a life-changing event like this to make. Westeros, the Stormlands, House Tarth. This is the dangerous world of Game of Thrones. The fantasy universe he knew so well back on Earth, the books he had devoured. After finishing the show, dragons, Essos, Ashai in the unknown lands beyond, and the small blonde girl clutching his arm with her freckles and her sturdy little body and her sapphire eyes, is Brienne the beauty, the future female knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Girl who on the page would mention only once that her older brother, 4 years older than her, had drowned when she was 4. That brother was Gallant Tarth, that brother is him, and honestly it is a crazy plot twist. Instead of shock he feels something close to relief. On Earth, he had been almost nobody to almost anyone. Here he is the heir to an island, the son of an earl, and the older brother of a girl whose character was among the most upright in the entire show. The body settles around him, the new memories knit themselves into the old, and his past life begins to feel more like a dream than a place he once lived. He can recall everything Gallant recalled from the moment he first knew himself in this world. He is 8 years old and alive, and his father is crushing the breath out of him with the fierceness of his relief. Father, he gasps out, I am fine. He pats his back as best he can with arms that still feel half made of seawater, and Earl Selwyn finally pulls back enough to look at him, his usual mask of composed Stormlander wisdom has fallen completely off his face. There is only the wild-eyed joy of a man who had been preparing himself, in the space of a single hourglass, to bury a second son. He feels the chill in Gallant's body and tears off his black velvet cloak and wraps him inside it, saying, Come, we are going back to the castle. He means to take him to Meister Harmon at once. But Gallant protests, Wait, father. They all look at him in shock, the steward Claude with his receding hair and his anxious balding pate, the knights and guards in their boiled leather, and his little sister with her tear-streaked freckled face. Without explanation, he steps toward the reef where the tide had spat him up, and begins to feel through the seawater and gravel for what he half remembered. Carrying ashore, and there beneath the water a faint clear shimmer catches his eye. He closes his hand around it and lifts it. Everyone freezes and holds their breath. This blade is clearly no mortal forge. The entire length of it gives off a soft cyan light, like the breath of the deep sea drawn upward into steel. It is not dazzling but gentle, rippling like the surface of the Bay of Tarth on a moonlit night. Along both edges of the blade run two thin orange-red lines, exactly like that sliver of horizon just before the sun rises out of the sea. The crossguard and the hilt are made of a gray-white material as warm as ivory and as cold as metal. At the pommel, an oval blue-black gemstone is set, ringed by a band of tiny inscriptions. The whole sword in his 8-year-old hand weighs nothing at all. It feels like morning light, and though he is holding it for the first time in this body, every man on that beach already knows its name. It speaks directly to them. A soft whisper echoes in their ears, touching every soul at the exact same moment. Oathkeeper, a holy sword. One knight gasps, the legendary morning light. The young lord actually found it. One by one, soldiers in boiled leather drop to one knee, their heavy swords thudding against the wet stone. They look at Gallant, devotion, feverish and dangerous to wear. Dangerous. Brienne, her face streaked with tears, points at his hand. Brother, father, Oathkeeper, she gabbles excitedly, pointing to the blade. Earl Selwyn's mouth hangs open in disbelief. Steward Claude meets his lord's eye, and his shock slowly transforms into a wild joy he cannot find words for. They stare at the legendary weapon, completely blind to the translucent panel appearing right before him. This floating screen materializes right in his line of sight, shining with soft blue script. It hovers in the air directly in front of his eyes like a window. Gallant, no title, strength 3.12, agility 4.1, spirit 12.8, magic blank skills. Swordsmanship at 3, archery at 7, riding at 4, common tongue of Westeros at 27, swimming at 29, 3 legendary bloodlines. Evenstar blood at 3% development, Targaryen at 0, and Storm King bloodline also at 0. His legendary weapon is Oathkeeper. Gold tier quality at maximum, cannot be upgraded, no legendary pet, judgment. Point 0, a tiny gray plus sign sits beside several of these lines. And at the bottom sits that one strange word, judgment, followed by an empty value. This is his ultimate cheat code, his legendary golden finger. He calls for a system in his mind, just as his past novels taught him. No answer, silence, whatever this mysterious floating system panel is. It lacks any intelligence to converse with. The plus signs are gray, meaning he cannot click them yet. The judgment point stat remains completely empty. To raise any of these attributes, he must first acquire those points. But how exactly does he get them? The interface offers no clues. He feels the slight headache any transmigrator would get from a manual with no instructions. He cannot help but wonder if this strange power is a gift from his reincarnation or something pulled straight from the sea. Alongside this legendary weapon, Oathkeeper is the only item on his screen. With a gold tier rating, already sitting at the absolute highest level possible. The heavy blade in his hand catches his attention again, looking closely at its pommel, where a small ring of ancient letters resolves for him alone. It reads Oathkeeper, the legendary holy sword bestowed by the Maiden of the Seven. In the ancient star, legends upon the hero Galladon of Morn during the Age of Heroes, it is completely real. This legendary sword is his. He cannot hide his excitement. What knight in Westeros does not dream of carrying an ancestral blade? Great houses build their entire legacies around one piece of Valyrian steel, yet here he is, 8 years old and soaking wet, holding a sword that completely eclipses Valyrian steel. Testing its balance, he lifts the blade. It cuts through the air effortlessly, and the weight perfectly suits the young body he inherited, as if it had measured him. The blade adjusts itself. To settle everything, he takes a wide backswing. He clips the protruding corner of a nearby reef, and a head-sized chunk of stone slides cleanly off. The cut itself is incredibly smooth, just like a mirror. Saying it cuts iron like butter does not even begin to describe this power. Earl Selwyn's voice goes raspy and trembling as he whispers the legendary name, Oathkeeper. He named his son Gallant to bless him with a legendary hero's name, Never. Imagining his eldest boy would actually find the lost holy sword that had been missing since the Dawn Age, he reaches out a trembling hand toward the blade. The moment his fingertip brushes the steel, the Lord yanks it back with a sharp hiss. It is as if he was struck by lightning, a bright red burn appearing instantly. A faint thread of smoke curls upward. Claude quietly notes the holy weapon chooses its own master. Surprisingly, there is absolutely no displeasure on the father's face, only a joy brighter than before. He commands his steward to try next. Claude sets his jaw, reaches out, and is immediately burned too. The two men look at one another. He commands every single knight and guard to try it too. Gulping, they reach out one by one. They recoil with cries of pain. Small, permanent burns form on their hands, leaving behind proud badges of honor. Yet none look angry, only reverent. They never expected this in their lifetime. They never expected their young master's accidental tumble would actually mean they would witness Tarth's legendary lost holy sword returning to the world. Gallant plants Oathkeeper deep into the sand, pulling it free as the men scramble up. Earl Selwyn finally lets the massive smile he was holding back break completely free. It blossoms into pure wonder. He commands everyone back to the castle. The guards roar their loud assent. Selwyn takes a leather sheath from a guard, wrapping the glowing blade before scooping his young son onto the horse with him. Claude takes little Brienne as the entire company turns its back on the rising tide, riding hard for Evenfall Hall. This majestic fortress sits high on a hill along the western coast of Tarth, looking directly across toward Storm's End. The castle is made of heavily weathered gray stone, thick, rugged walls. Right at its center rises the majestic and towering Duskstar Tower. Their family banner flies high, a yellow sun and blue moon mottled with green. It marks 1,000 years of proud rule by the time the riders arrive. Waiting in the courtyard is old Meister Harmon, wearing his heavy gray chain. Immediately, he reports that fires are lit and hot soup is ready. But the old Meister has absolutely no idea about the legendary blade yet. Confused, he wonders why every face is glowing with absolute fervor instead of grief. Inside the magnificent great hall, right by the cracking fire, the servants gather. Claude and Meister Harmon quickly strip off Gallant's freezing wet clothes, wrapping him. Wrapped tightly in a thick wool blanket, he sits by the warm hearth. Beside him, Claude gasps slightly when he spots the legendary Oathkeeper. Meister Harmon eyes the strangely beautiful longsword, deciding to ask about it later. For now, he simply hands a warm bowl of soup to the boy. Nearby, little Brienne keeps throwing tiny handfuls of kindling onto the roaring fire. Believing a bigger fire heals her brother faster, she works with sweet devotion. Gallant cannot help but reach out, pulling his adorable sister into a hug. She is nothing like the cold, distant brother from his past life. She burrows trustingly, deep inside the wool blanket, until only her freckled nose and bright sapphire eyes peek out from the fold. This sudden closeness cracks something open deep within. A heart Gallant thought was shut forever. Earl Selwyn watches them from the hearth, with a slow, deep smile of relief. Then his eyes fall upon the blade that rests nearby. Steeling himself, the Lord reaches out for Oathkeeper. This time he has learned his lesson, grasping only the leather sheath. Even so, the sheer weight shocks him, 40 pounds at least, twice that of normal. Two-handed swords, he must use both hands to keep it level. Yet at dawn, Gallant had swung this legendary weapon easily with one hand. Its mystical weight shifts only for its true master, turning leaden for everyone else. He studies the inscriptions near the pommel, tracing the name Oathkeeper. He sets the weapon down very carefully and exhales slowly, staring up at the family banner hanging above the fire. 2 suns on red, 2 moons on blue, the proud sigil of House Tarth. The Starks, Baratheons, and Lannisters have all had their glorious legends. Even the upstart Tyrells of Highgarden, all of them have made their mark on the world, yet House Tarth has not left a true mark on history. For a very long time, the lord of their house was once honored with the ancient title of Evenstar, though no one calls them that anymore. The end of dusk, Gallant's father whispers, the family motto coming to him unbidden, the coming of dawn. He looks across the warm hearth at Gallant cradling baby Brienne, allowing himself to believe that his son is the long-awaited dawn of House Tarth. Once the fire settles and Brienne dozes off peacefully against her brother's chest, Selwyn turns to face him. Gallant, he says quietly. His voice carries a sharp, careful edge. Why did you jump into that cave? Without thinking, was it old Fax's son who led you there? Gallant understands exactly what his father is asking. No, father, Gallant answers, shaking his head. Old Fax's son did nothing wrong. You do not need to trouble him. In his inherited memories, the young fisher boy had begged him not to go. Selwyn stares deeply, weighing if some hidden plot is at play. But in the end, he believes his son. Why then, the Lord asks, were you so certain the holy sword was waiting inside that dark cave? Gallant pauses, offering a useful lie. He claims he heard a mystical call from the sword. Selwyn's eyes widen. Gallant nods gravely. He must lay the groundwork for his future strange actions. If they believe the sword guides him, any weird behavior will be easily accepted. Earl Selwyn eagerly fills in the rest of the puzzle for himself. He imagines his young boy is marked for a grand, divine destiny. A powerful hero favored by the 7 gods themselves. The profound realization settles on the father like heavy winter snow, collapsing under its own weight. He keeps silent, but his rapid breathing betrays the heavy pressure he feels. In a single afternoon, he has accepted a hope so heavy it frightens him. Yet Gallant feels none of that pressure. Instead, he quietly teases his little sister as she starts to drowse, gently pinching her warm, chubby hands. With his fingers, 4-year-old Brienne is sturdy and completely warm. And incredibly cute, no hint yet of the towering warrior she will become a decade later. No awkward growth, no crooked teeth, her sapphire eyes are exactly as described in the books. The freckles are right where the story said they would be. Gallant is already fond of this little sister. He remembers how she was called ugly in the original story, mostly because Of her height, her crooked teeth, and her unusually broad and powerful build. Rather than her actual facial structure, Gallant starts to think that, given a little quiet attention, this small girl could grow into a tall, exceptionally strong woman who is also unmistakably handsome, proper skin care keeping her teeth straight and the right balance of exercise. He files these notes away. He has nothing but time, so he reopens the system panel in his mind. Reading slowly as his sister sleeps on his chest, strength is 3.12, and agility is 4.1. These numbers suggest an adult average of 10. His spirit is 12.8. That is incredibly high for an 8-year-old. And the only real explanation is a transmigrating soul fusing with a young child's memories. These skill levels match what he finds in Gallant's recollections, with riding, archery, and swordsmanship being real, but only. Starting out, his common tongue is at 27% since he is only 8 years into reading and writing. His swimming is 29 because of the island and the sea around it. He assumes 100% means full mastery for humans. Then come the bloodlines, something he absolutely did not expect. 3 legendary heritages, which the system panel declares to be completely undeveloped for now. The blood of the Evenstar runs in House Tarth since the Dawn Age, and must be why Brienne grows to be so incredibly tall and strong later. Perhaps a sliver of Evenstar awakening in her body, the Storm King lineage, traces back to House Durrandon, the ancient rulers who once held Storm's End. Before House Targaryen arrived, House Tarth and House Durrandon frequently intermarried. For centuries, a trait that still shows in their hair, the Tarth men, much like House Baratheon afterward, carry the signature thick black hair of the old Storm Kings, while Brienne inherits the pale gold of the Evenstars. From her mother's side, that is the pair he might have expected, but the third one, the Targaryen bloodline, is a total shock. House Baratheon, ruling for 2 centuries, has married into House Tarth quite often, and their own veins still carry the diluted, yet very real blood of old Valyria. Those Baratheon Tarth marriages, a thin thread of Targaryen blood was woven into him, almost too faint to notice. For most of his house, this is meaningless, but for Gallant, it means he can invest points. This bloodline matters more than he wants to admit, allocating enough points to awaken this dragon. Blood would eventually grant him total immunity to fire, and even the ability to call dragons. Dragons are absolutely not optional in this world. Having one versus not having one changes everything. That is why this is the bloodline he is hungriest to feed. Right now, he does not even know how to earn any judgment points. Then, the old steward's gentle voice suddenly breaks his study. Of the panel, young master, the bath is ready. Please come up to your room and rest. Claude has appeared at his elbow with a soft smile and a faint flush across his bald head from the firelight. He looks down, realizing that even though he is dry now, the salt still feels gritty against his skin. He gently lifts Brienne onto his father's lap, and Earl Selwyn settles her against him with a gentle, weary affection. Go on, his father says, get some good rest. He follows Claude up the spiral granite stairs of Duskstar Tower. The iron oil lamps in the stone walls throw long flickering shadows, while the muffled sound of the sea echoes up through a high, small window. His bedroom sits on the 5th floor. Heavy oak door carved with a yellow sun and blue moon. Inside, a faded tapestry of Galladon of Morn hand in hand with the Maiden of the Seven. A thick wool rug and a wooden tub already steaming with hot water, lavender petals and herbs float on the surface. A fire warms the hearth, and a small adjoining door stands slightly ajar, opening into the maid's narrow alcove. A girl of 13 or 14, with chestnut hair tied in a ponytail, rises from the tub side and curtsies. Galina, the maid his late mother had personally chosen for him, has served him since he was small enough to need her help to dress. She helps him out of his salt-stiff clothes with the easy skill of long habit, and he sinks into the warm water and the scent of rosemary, feeling his body surrender the last of its Tension, he tells her she may go for now. She bows, retreating to her alcove. He leans his head back against the rim of the wooden tub, closes his eyes, and thinks. He has arrived too early. By Meister Armin's reckoning, the year is 275 after the conquest. The Mad King Aerys still sits the Iron Throne. Ned Stark is 12 only. 4 years older than him. The tourney at Harrenhal is more than a decade away. The War of the Usurper lies even further, for now he is in the same generation as Jaime Lannister, Ned Stark, and Petyr Baelish, with all of them still mere children. Quite a wild thought, honestly. He smiles in the dark, eyes still tightly closed. By the time the actual main plot begins, he will be around 30, in the absolute prime of his strength, having spent 20 long years preparing. He is the heir to Evenfall Hall and the legitimate son of a lord. Tarth is not the wealthiest fief on the eastern coast. That title still belongs to the Arbor, but boasts a population near 150,000, 3 towns, and 20 or 30 villages, mountains, grasslands, and forests, plus a fleet of more than a dozen trading ships ready for war. With just one word, his father can muster 20 knights and 3,000 soldiers. Tarth lies northeast of Storm's End, the natural shield of House Baratheon. It is the closest island in Westeros to the continent of Essos, 5 days sailing to Pentos, 3 to Tyrosh, faster than the run to King's Landing. A truly excellent place to start, and he can find no flaws. With the unique knowledge of a transmigrator and 20 years of patient work, with a brother as the heir and a sister who is Brienne, with 3 bloodlines, a holy sword, and a system panel promising growth in exchange for judgment, he could accomplish so much. When the War of the Usurper comes, House Tarth can claim its fair share of spoils by backing Robert Baratheon. He finds himself soaking in the steam, beginning to plan. Galina's voice reaches him through the alcove door, asking if he wants more hot water. He rises from the tub, instead water cascading off his body, and tells her he is finished. She drapes a soft, warm towel around him, drying him off as she always has. He is only 8, yet already not yet developed, and refusing her now would just look weird. She hands him undergarments and a black silk sleeping robe. Then she rings a small bell, and a few sturdy serving women come in to carry the tub and its cooling water out of the room. Galina tidies the bed once more and bows her way out. He is not ready to sleep just yet. The afternoon light is still bright, so he pushes the window open onto the deep blue sea and the pale line of the horizon. He looks down at Sapphire Port, where the merchants are docking and the fishing boats are coming home. He sees Sapphire Town's red roofs beyond and the green of distant pastures above the cliffs. The walls of Evenfall Hall stand 20 feet high, built of gray granite 10 feet thick at the base, crowned by a low crenellated parapet with iron arrow slits. Over at the southeast, a half-collapsed watchtower leans against the curtain wall, its ruins overgrown with stubborn green sea. Rocket Duskstar Tower itself stands 100 feet tall, a beacon in the fog for merchant ships passing through the strait. Other towers, kitchens, and an armory and storerooms flank it under weathered bluish-black tiles, white smoke rising from 2 of their square chimneys. The courtyard below is paved with gravel and crushed seashells, neat as a swept hearth, nothing like the muddy yards of Winterfell he remembers from television. Behind the castle, the boughs of ancient trees mark the godswood, where the boy he once was used to play. 1,000 years of careful Tarth rule has built a stronghold that is both beautiful and stubborn. Whatever he had imagined of medieval life, this is better. Eventually, he closes the window and climbs into bed, and to his surprise, he sleeps more soundly than he ever had on Earth. Perhaps 3 legendary bloodlines come with the gift of deep rest. In the morning, he wakes feeling rested in a way he cannot ever remember feeling. Angelina calls a cheerful good morning from her alcove, bringing him hot water and toiletries. The toothbrush in the cup is, of course, just a chewed twig the length of a chopstick, the upper third frayed into rough bristles. He dips it in salt as the previous gallon used to do, cleaning his teeth as best he can. His gums sting and blight a Little for his trouble, he will need to invent a proper toothbrush, along with so many other small things. The thought makes him smile. Angelina dresses him in a close-fitting linen shirt, a dark gray wool and silk robe embroidered with antique gold thread patterns, fastened with 3 ebony buttons, plain. Black linen trousers tied below the knee with leather cords, a pair of high cowhide boots for the rocky island ground, and around his waist a tanned cowhide belt with a gold buckle and a wave-carved tail. The entire outfit marks him as a noble instantly. A commoner could not afford this even after a year of work. Talk about a massive lifestyle upgrade from his past life of owning barely 2 shirts. Back then, he had turned down every confession from girls at school, simply because he was too ashamed of his poor clothes. Now, he stands before the half-length brass mirror in the south corner of the bedroom, staring at the boy he has become. Short, dark, messy curls frame his face, showing the deep black hair of the Storm Kings, just like his father, a pair of clear blue eyes are ringed with light gray near the pupil, looking like a misty morning sea. His pale skin is scattered with a few faint freckles across his nose. He has long, slender brows, a straight nose, and a chin that is firm but not yet hard. At nearly 5 feet tall, he is far bigger than an 8-year-old should be. He stares at his brass reflection. Smiling quietly, he feels this face truly suits the future master of Oathkeeper. He leaves the bedroom and goes down the spiral stairs to the great hall, where the maids are already laying out breakfast, cheerfully calling out to the young master. They bow with a bright warmth in their eyes that they did not used to have. The news of his holy sword has clearly spread all over the island already. Even the road to Sapphire Town knows, and yet his sister Brienne is still sound asleep. He sits at his usual spot. Breakfast is an absolute feast. 3 kinds of bread, 4 kinds of meat, 2 soups, fresh apples, blood oranges, and roasted pumpkin chunks to balance the heavy meat. The cooking is rather simple by his old standards, but the ingredients are top tier. Instead of wasting time waiting for his sister to wake, he climbs up the adjacent tower, where Meister Harmon teaches among his ravens. Meister Harmon greets him with sparkling eyes. The old man was the one Earl Selwyn told about the holy sword last night, keeping the excited old man awake until dawn. The Meister's heavy chain is far larger than average, with links for astronomy, history, and medicine. There is gold for arithmetic, plus platinum for mastering ancient Valyrian, and older texts finished with copper for navigation and cartography. He has served House Tarth for 30 years and is 60 now, his hair completely streaked with gray, yet his sharp eyes missed nothing. He kindly suggests the boy should rest after nearly drowning, but Gallant refuses. He insists that knowledge matters just as much as steel, which delights the old man. Very few highborn boys would choose heavy books over riding and hunting. To see the new bearer of a legendary sword choose study brings him pure joy. The Meister tests his knowledge on heraldry first, asking about House Royce of the Vale. In just 2 seconds, Gallant recalls Runestone, north of Goldtown along the narrow sea. Their sigil is pebbles between orange runes, and their house words are "We remember." Without even being asked, he adds that the Royces are one of the few houses of the Vale who descend from the first men, whose ancient kings of the Bronze Age held the title of Bronze Kings. He notes they once wielded the Valyrian steel sword, Lament, until it was lost during the Dance of the Dragons, though they still keep ancestral bronze armor inscribed with protective runes. He realizes that he remembers details with an absolute clarity that his former self back on Earth never possessed. His mind and memory have suddenly sharpened into something incredibly dependable, earning him Meister Harmon's total admiration. When asked about House Valyrian, Gallant instantly names Driftmark, describing the silver seahorse on a sea-green field and reciting their words, the old, the true. He explains they settled Driftmark before the Targaryens. Targaryens arrived on Dragonstone, sharing classic Valyrian features even though they were never dragon lords, and that they often lead the fleet as master of ships. The Maester stops him there, calling out his name. He says the boy has fully mastered heraldry and will now begin a new lesson. Sliding a piece of parchment over, he offers 3 new options: geography and maps of the 7 kingdoms, noble etiquette, and the laws of succession. Medicine and herbal knowledge. Gallant pauses to consider, then chooses geography. Etiquette and laws can wait, and medicine is only secondary, but a transmigrator without a map is just wasting his incredible good fortune. Then he makes another request. Can he take a second subject? Of course, the Maester replies. Asking which one, Valyrian, Gallant answers, making the old scholar raise his brow. It is normally only taught to children of House Targaryen and House Valyrian. To other Westerosi nobles, it is useless, as only the free cities speak it. He offers his simpler reason, mentioning the merchants he hears at Sapphire Port, and how he hopes to travel across the sea to Essos one day. But his real reason, that no one can ride a dragon speaking only the common tongue, is something he keeps strictly to himself. The Maester nods at his ambition, noting that traveling the free cities is a worthy goal for a young heir. Having spent 30 years on Tarth meeting merchants from Essos and the Summer Isles, the old Maester believes a voyage will broaden the boy's mind. Very well, he says. He will teach both subjects. The lessons will be fast, requiring more independent study. Unrolling a massive map on the long table, they begin with the lands of Westeros. Gallant absorbs the geographic details almost as fast as the scholar can explain them, since he spent hours of his past life staring at digital maps of these lands. Harmon smiles at his brilliant student, then pulls down a slim volume of Valyrian poetry. He begins teaching the boy the complex script and pronunciation using these ancient verses. It is hardly the textbook a normal teacher would pick, but in a world without dictionaries, one teaches with what is available. Gallant simply grits his teeth and listens. After 2 incense sticks worth of studying, he quietly checks his system panel. The skill bar does not show Valyrian yet, likely because it is still below 1%. He is not worried. He has no judgment points to spend anyway, and no clue on how to earn them, but a knock at the door breaks his focus. The Lord of Tarth has returned and summoned them. Gallant bows to the smiling Maester, who concludes today's lesson, before the boy follows the maid down to the great hall. There his father waits, holding a sword. By its unique hilt, Gallant recognizes it instantly as Oathkeeper, but the rough leather wrapping from yesterday has been completely replaced. Now a beautiful, freshly forged black scabbard houses the blade. Gallant realizes where his father went last night. He visited Byron, the most skilled blacksmith in Sapphire Town. To have this sheath crafted before sunrise, the bloodshot look in his father's eyes reveals that he did not sleep. Gallant, he says, the scabbard is ready. Presenting the weapon with both hands, the boy accepts it with a single hand. To examine the details, rough-hammered black iron provides a solid, heavy feel on the outside, lined with light pinewood displaying a beautiful golden grain along its seam. A band of gray sharkskin near the collar offers grip, while delicate silver threads trace along the iron and wood in gleaming lines. It measures about 4 feet from the opening to the tip. Curiously, the leather clasp is designed not to rest on the hip but on the back. His father planned ahead, choosing a diagonal shoulder rig that fits a child's frame better than a hip belt. At 8 years old, Gallant is still too short to carry a 4-foot sword at his waist, but on his back he will carry it effortlessly. He draws the blade slightly, letting the cool light of the blade flares, humming a soft, pleased metallic note as a third of the breathtaking steel leaves its sheath. Every face in the hall fixes on it and breathes a little shallower. The sword is so beautiful that simply looking at it can absorb a man's mind. He sheathes it, weighing the scabbarded sword in his hand. It is right at the edge of what a child of his size could comfortably carry. He noticed his father straining when passing it over, but to Gallant, it feels incredibly light. It seems Oathkeeper has its own opinion of its master, and adjusts itself. No wonder the panel calls its quality maxed and unimprovable. Thank you, Father, he says, and Earl Selwyn nods with the smile of a man who has not yet stopped being grateful that his son is alive to thank him. Brienne comes running in then with sand on her hands and bare feet, throwing herself into his arms. She has been at the beach building little castles. Gallant, his father, says, watching her. Brienne is 4.5, so tomorrow she joins him. Meister Harmon's lessons. Gallant nods. She is sturdier and brighter than girls her age, and at the perfect age for the common tongue. Claude is sent to tell the kitchens to prepare lunch, and as he goes, Meister Harmon hurries in, clutching a letter still warm from a raven, telling the Earl that the Queen has born a healthy boy, named by King Aerys as Viserys Targaryen, his father. Chuckles. After a string of miscarriages and stillbirths, the Queen has finally born the king a healthy prince, he says. The king's mood will improve a little. Gallant shakes his head slightly to himself, muttering that it is Viserys the sleeping dragon. The Maester mentions there is a second letter. Lord Tywin, to celebrate the prince's birth, plans a great tourney at Lannisport 1 month from now. Selwyn reads it and frowns, saying he will not go. He will have Claude arrange a gift to send for the prince's name day. The Maester nods and moves to leave, but Selwyn bids him stay, sit, and eat. There is something he wishes to discuss. Gallant sits down with his sister on his lap, while his father and the Maester lay out for one another the political map of Westeros, the open quarrel between King Aerys and his hand, Lord Tywin, the small disagreements that have grown into open ones, the upcoming 10th name day of Stannis, the second son of Lord Steffon Baratheon, and the dwarf son of Lord Tywin, who has not died as everyone expected, but is growing up at Casterly Rock. He listens, recognizing every name from a life he cannot dare mention. They are just children for now. Through their talk he begins to understand why the king is called the Mad King, not only for his cruelty but for his downright bizarre ideas. He once proposed to Lord Rickard Stark of Winterfell that a new wall be built 100 leagues north of the existing one to claim all the land between. Lord Rickard had stood there speechless because no one had any idea how a new wall could be constructed. On top of that, the area was home to 10,000 wildlings whose displacement would have meant war. Visiting Sunspear, the king had told the Princess of Dorne that he meant to dig a great underground canal through the Red Mountains to bring water down from the rainforests, making the Dornish desert bloom with flowers. Listening to this, Gallant almost chokes on a piece of bread. Laughing, it is clear that Aerys and Viserys are cut from the exact. They are cut from the same cloth. Viserys' famous rants about waking the dragon must have come straight from his father. Gallant easily notices his own father's open contempt for the king, while offering nothing but carefully measured praise for Lord Tywin. Whether Tywin is deliberately driving the king mad or simply doing a competent job under brutal conditions is hard to tell. Either way, the man's ruling skills, military leadership, and sheer political genius are unmatched. He easily ranks among the best in Westeros. Later, Gallant and Brienne take a nap. Kids need their sleep to grow. Once awake, he slings Oathkeeper across his back and heads to the Godswood behind the castle, right there among the ancient trees. A tall, brown-haired man in heavy plate armor stands waiting with his back turned. Hearing the quiet approach, he turns, his heavily scarred face splitting into a warm smile. This is Sir Goodwin, Master-at-Arms of Evenfall Hall, a famous tourney knight, who placed high 7 years ago, stern with his men but always kind to Gallant. Calling out to the boy, Goodwin explains his father wanted them to continue training today. Goodwin inspects his color and movement, relieved that yesterday's near drowning did no real damage. Gallant cracks a joke about how every kid on Tarth drinks seawater, and the old knight laughs while warning him never to repeat that around his father. Suddenly, the Master-at-Arms locks his eyes onto the massive blade slung behind him. He asks if this is the legendary Holy Sword from Morn's Point. Gallant slowly draws it. Right there in the dim shadows of the Godswood, Instantly, that brilliant light flares again. Goodwin freezes in absolute shock, whispering that the weapon is truly extraordinary. Hailing from the riverlands near Harrenhal, the seasoned warrior had initially doubted the wild rumors. But now those doubts completely vanish. Quietly, he confesses to the boy that this spectacular sight actually outshines Arthur Dayne drawing his legendary sword, Dawn. With a shrug and a smirk, he insists they cannot use this weapon for training. Even a tiny graze would be devastating. Gallant explains he only brought it to test. Yesterday, the blade effortlessly carved through solid rock without him even realizing it. He wants to see what it can really do, and Goodwin's eyes instantly light up. After all, what knight could resist testing a legendary holy blade? He points toward a massive, dried stump nearby. It is incredibly thick, rising just 2 feet off the ground, and completely covered in ancient scars from the boy's archery practice. Goodwin tells him to give it a swing. Gallant grips the hilt tightly and strikes. The blade cuts through like paper, sharp, clean, and completely effortless. A massive chunk slides right off, thudding onto the damp moss below. The cut is mirror smooth. Stunned, Goodwin walks over to inspect it. For a long moment, the old knight is completely speechless. Normally, cutting through solid seasoned timber with a greatsword is exhausting. A normal blade would jam immediately. Instead, the boy has just sliced a massive third of it clean off. To Gallant, the strike felt no harder than cutting through soft cardboard. There was barely a moment of resistance before the steel slid through like silk. He swings again just to be absolutely sure. An even larger chunk flies off. With zero effort, the thick log feels like a fragile twig in his hands. The boy cannot hide his grin. This sensation reminds him of hitting Cabbage's back in his past life. Meanwhile, Goodwin watches the display, his breathing growing heavy. Without saying a word, the veteran knight silently unbuckles his heavy steel chest plate. He walks to the wooden practice dummy he always uses, fitting the leather vest onto the dummy and tying it tight. Try that, Goodwin says, but Gallant asks if he is sure. Plate armor is incredibly expensive. This vest alone is worth 2 gold dragons, while a fisherman on Tarth works a whole year for just 20 or 30 silver stags. Goodwin shrugs, to know the truth of a blade, you must test it on real armor. He expects Lord Selwyn will repay the cost. Fair enough, Gallant says. He sets his stance, gripping the hilt with both hands, swinging with everything his 8-year-old body can muster. Sparks fly with a hard, clean ring. When the blade stops, he sees the chest of the metal plate is slit diagonally across 3/4 of its length, only barely held together by the bottom hem. Underneath, the wood of the dummy carries a deep, brutal gash. Anyone wearing that armor would be completely gutted and dead. Goodwin stares in pure shock, looking at a future he never could have anticipated. If an 8-year-old can destroy armor like this, he wonders, what will the 18-year-old do? Just imagine what he will achieve on a charging warhorse. He shakes off the shock. Gallant, he says, this blade truly lives up to its name. As a holy sword, Gallant nods. The 7-pointed star reminds him that Galladon of Morn drew Oathkeeper only 3 times in his entire life, always facing a foe of terrifying power. He is starting to suspect this weapon holds far more secrets than he has yet discovered. That faint orange line along its edge is a trace of magic he has not yet learned to summon. He thinks of the magical progress bar on his status panel that sits flat at 0. Perhaps the deeper power of Oathkeeper draws on magic the wielder must supply themselves. The Age of Heroes was a time of magic and legendary monsters, where a hero would need far more than just a sharp blade to make history. But Goodwin will not let this lesson turn into a lecture. Gallant, he says, this sword is truly astonishing, but please do not learn to rely on it. A knight's strength is never the weapon in his hand. Arthur Dayne without Dawn is still the greatest warrior in the 7 kingdoms. Farmer wielding Oathkeeper still loses to any trained knight. Gallant says he understands. And he does. The sword is the icing, but he is the cake. Goodwin is satisfied. Switch to The wooden practice sword, his master says, today's training begins, his way of. Teaching Gallant is surprisingly simple. He never spars with him directly. Instead, he has spent 2 years building him from the foundation up, perfecting his grip, generating force. From the core, polishing footwork, and never permitting any bad habits. His foundation is incredibly strong. Now they focus on precision. 2 months ago, Goodwin set him to stand before the dummy while calling out specific targets, like heart, liver, spleen, lungs, head, neck, and hands. Gallant had to whip his practice sword around and strike that exact spot within a single second of the command. He can now hit any target called within a heartbeat, so they have moved to a much harder drill using a basket of sour green apples from the nearby hills. Goodwin stands directly across from him, throwing them fast while Gallant, holding his wooden sword like a baseball bat, must strike each apple out of the air. In those first weeks, he could not hit any of them, getting hit repeatedly until his pride faded and he learned to track the targets. Now he hits 1 in 3. Goodwin throws at 70% strength, which is incredibly fast. Once Gallant can hit every apple, his master says they will be replaced with green dates the size of olives, fast, accurate, and ruthless. That is the heart of the sword, Goodwin tells him, a lesson Gallant heartily agrees with as their practice wraps up. The basket of training swords is empty, the sun sliding low as Goodwin wipes his eyes. He looks at the empty basket and tells Gallant with a smile not to head back yet. Earl Selwyn wants Goodwin to bring the young heir down to the meadow outside Sapphire Town. An execution is scheduled before sunset, making Gallant stop and ask about it. 2 rapists, Goodwin answers calmly, and the young heir simply nods in response. In Westeros, such criminals face hangings or beheadings, carried out by the lords themselves. Lord Selwyn always swings the blade personally, both to hear grievances and to assert authority. Gallant has already been made to watch 2 of these brutal spectacles in the past. The lord is preparing his eldest son to inherit his seat. They mount and ride out. They travel down towards Sapphire Port through the evening. 3 major towns sit on Tarth, namely Sapphire, Swordgrass, and Seahorse, with Sapphire Town being the largest. This is because it sits right next to the best harbor on the island. Executions always take place on the grassy meadow just outside the town walls. By the time they arrive, a crowd has gathered alongside Lord Selwyn's guards and knights. Dozens of townsfolk turn as cries for young Master Gallant begin to ring out. A path quickly clears for him, while the hum of excited chatter grows much louder. He is carrying the legendary blade at his back, and trust me, the news has spread insanely fast. On an island of this size, that is more than enough time for gossip. People whisper that Gallant Tarth, sharing a legendary name, has made a monumental discovery. He recovered the sword Oathkeeper at Morn's Point, sparking rumors that the legend has returned. Soon, every single soul on the island will know his name and his grand destiny. He will not be just an heir anymore, but a living legend as he greets his father. Dismounting, Gallant sees Lord Selwyn standing in the center of the field with a greatsword. He wears black leather gloves, his hands resting on the hilt with a solemn face. He only smiles when he spots his son. In front of him kneel 2 bound men. Both look wretched. One of them is a thin, yellow-haired man with his head bowed low. The other is a burly, scarred man with a missing ear and a savage look. His furious eyes remain fixed on the lord, who wastes absolutely no time. Lord Selwyn lifts the greatsword from the dirt and gazes down at the blonde prisoner. He asks Brass, son of Glyn, if he has any final words in his defense. The pale prisoner simply shakes his head in silence, prompting the lord to speak. He recites the formal execution sentence in the name of King Ares II. Lord of the 7 kingdoms and the protector of the realm, the decree continues. Lord Selwyn of House Tarth officially sentences the criminal to face his death. With a swift motion, the heavy blade comes down, shearing through bone cleanly. Blood sprays as the severed head hits the ground, making the boy's heart skip slightly. He does not feel sick or even look away, a detail Goodwin quickly catches. The master gives a small nod of approval, mirrored by several watchful knights. Even some observant townsfolk notice, and Lord Selwyn looks back at his son, satisfied. Turning to the next criminal, he asks Sagari, son of Mudin, for any final defense. Staring at the headless corpse beside him, the bald prisoner is pushed beyond fear. Pure rage takes over, and he sneers, asking what exactly he is supposed to defend. He boasts of taking the woman, insolently asking who the Lord is to judge him. He sneers that sooner or later, the heads of the Tarth family will also roll. Sagari sneers that the Lord will end up in the dirt, and his castle's women will be ruined. He laughs, claiming that day is close, until a brown-haired knight suddenly steps forward. The knight kicks Sagari face first into the dirt and stuffs a filthy rag into his mouth. He ties it tight. Gallantar's father remains completely expressionless as he slowly raises his greatsword. He begins the sentence in the name of the Andals, but the boy suddenly interrupts. "Wait a moment," Gallantar calls out. Instantly, every single face in the meadow turns toward him. He asks his father to let him do it, claiming he has no stage fright. Stepping forward, the young boy draws Oathkeeper from his back with a sharp, clean sound. The cyan glow of the blade and the faint orange edge speak louder than words. This sword speaks for him where his 8-year-old voice simply cannot. Everyone here thinks it is just childhood bravado, but they are in for a surprise. The system panel on his screen needs judgment points, and he needs them now. He figures passing judgment is the key, and this kneeling criminal is the perfect test. His father looks at him, his face a careful mask of pure surprise. But he actually lowers his massive sword. Twice now, he has chosen to trust the boy. He is letting his son handle things far beyond the scope of a normal 8-year-old. Any other lord would have lashed out at such disrespect, but he merely steps back. With a silent nod, he yields his spot. The entire meadow grows dangerously quiet. Gallantar stands before the bald man, gripping Oathkeeper with both hands and resting the blade. He rests it on the man's neck, deepening his young voice as much as possible. "Sagari, son of Mudin, your actions have violated our laws, and your crimes are unforgivable. In the name of the morning," he declares, "I sentence you to death." Without a shred of hesitation, he lifts Oathkeeper high and swings it down. Cyan and orange flash together through the air with a strange, high metallic hum. The blade strikes, Sagari's head is cleanly severed, bouncing twice upon the cold dirt. To everyone's utter shock, there is not a single drop of blood spilled. The wound is instantly charred shut, leaving only a thin wisp of sizzling smoke. That is it, the crowd is frozen. To Gallantar, the strike felt remarkably light. It felt like slicing a simple rope, far too easy for an actual sword. Somehow, taking the first life of his new existence does not weigh on him at all. Instead, he focuses entirely on his screen. Gallantar, no title, strength 3.12. Agility 4.1, spirit 12.8, skills and bloodlines remain unchanged. No legendary pet, but there it is, judgment points 2, exactly 2. His heart hammers, his theory was completely right, and talk about a massive relief. He still does not know if any death works, or only executing a criminal. Either way, the rule is clear. He closes the screen without spending a thing. He is only 8, and he will not dance with joy after decapitating a man. He suppresses the urge, looking down at the headless body with a neutral gaze. Surprisingly, he only feels a very mild distaste rather than any actual disgust. A human corpse is ultimately not that different from a butchered beast. Just flesh and quiet muscle, it was the messy guts he had always feared. But with this ultra-clean execution, there is absolutely none of that mess left behind. "You did well," his father says, stepping over to rest a hand on his shoulder. The Lord has decided in his own mind that the criminal's wicked words provoked his son. He believes it was a blow of righteous fury, and he deeply approves. Lord Tarth is stunned. His 8-year-old son actually took a man's life. Noble kids usually turn away, but Gallant stands firm, facing the crowd. Nobody leaves, they just stare at the boy. The sword is still in his hand. Suddenly a quiet chant begins. Gallant, Gallant, Galladon of Mornay, it echoes softly. It swells. Soon, nearly 40 voices join the whisper, sounding almost like a holy prayer. He is utterly lost. He has no idea how to handle this, so he just offers a polite, dignified wave. Murmuring to his father that they should go, Lord Tarth silently nods, heading back. They ride all the way to Evenfall Hall. Gallant immediately makes a quick excuse to slip upstairs. Hot water is waiting. He sends his maid, Galena, away into her alcove. Sinking into the bath, he opens his glowing system panel. 2 precious judgment points remain. They hover near his level. He looks over his options. Time to choose. Magic is locked. His legendary weapon is already fully maxed out. There is no legendary pet option either. That leaves him with strength, agility, or his bloodline. He wants that Targaryen bloodline, desperately, but 2 points is a heavy gamble. What does a double-point bloodline upgrade actually do? He has absolutely no way of knowing. If the system hides the effects, he might waste his hard-earned points. Best to play it safe. He needs a basic stat with immediate results. Will it be strength or agility? He takes a deep breath and makes his final choice. Strength, it is the most obvious change. He focuses on the icon. He double-clicks the plus sign with his mind. Suddenly, 2 golden symbols flicker before him. His judgment points instantly vanish. His strength stat ticks up. Watch this closely. It goes from 3.12 to 3.14. Suddenly, intense heat surges. The feeling is scalding, far hotter than the bath, yet it does not burn. His blood seems to boil, but with a gentle warmth, it slowly settles. The raw power flows through his muscles, into his cells, sinking deep into his bones. Gallant lets out a soft sigh. From the alcove, Galena calls out. She asks if the hot water is too much. He quickly tells her no. He blames it on his intense afternoon training, letting her relax. It is the perfect cover. But the interruption ruined the moment. The magical warmth has already faded. The physical upgrade is finished. He can no longer feel it actively happening. It is done. Testing his strength, he presses his fingers hard against the wooden tub. The power is absolutely real. He is no giant, but all afternoon soreness is gone. An increase of 0.02 has completely restored his body. It did for him what a full week of training would have. His entire future is actively rewriting itself. A normal heir to Tarth grows so incredibly slowly. They need 10 years of training to gain 1 point of strength. That is practically nothing per day, yet Gallant just skipped an entire week of work. Just 2 judgment points did that. Think of the endless possibilities. But there is a massive catch to this incredible cheat. He must find points regularly. He immediately thinks of the blonde prisoner his father had executed. That execution was a complete and utter waste. 2 precious judgment points are gone forever. He has to act. He must convince his father to let him handle executions. Gallant quickly dresses with Galena's help and heads downstairs. The hall is warm and bright. His father is currently playing with young Brienne in front of the fire. She beams when she spots him, calling out to her big brother. And lifts her fat little arms. Gallant walks over and scoops her up. She feels heavier than she was a season ago and is growing fast, but his new strength holds her. Without trouble, his father playfully asks if Brienne feels a little heavier again. He is also faintly puzzled. Brienne is plainly outpacing other girls. Her age and Meister Armin saying she will grow tall is starting to look less like a guess and more like a fact. Gallant says she is fine, no weight at all, and pinches her cheek because she hates being called heavy and is a sensitive little girl. She closes her eyes and gives his father a smug sidelong glance. He laughs and tells Claude to have the maids serve dinner. Over the meal, Selwyn asks how it felt today. Gallant says it was good and pauses. He slowly adds that he seems to feel an unusual kind of power. Selwyn asks what he means. Gallant chooses his words, explaining Oathkeeper felt excited. His father's mouth opens in shock. He tells Claude without taking his eyes off Gallant to take Brienne to the kitchens for now. Claude understands that Once and lifts Brienne out of Lord Selwyn's arms. Brienne goes unwillingly. But the castle kitchens are a place of strong attraction for her, and she allows herself to be led away. When the hall is empty of all other ears, his father leans forward. "Gallant, what are you saying?" Gallant hesitates, then tells him that after he killed that man, Oathkeeper seemed pleased. It increased his strength. Not by much, but it was unmistakable. He only reveals as much as necessary. Selwyn is his father, his natural ally, and lord of the island, two of them pulling together will go much further than one man alone. Lord Selwyn stares at him for a long moment, his chest rising and falling. He half believes the boy already. Gallant's face is not the face of someone joking, and he has no reason to lie about this. And Oathkeeper is the holy sword bestowed by the Maiden of the Seven, and if any sword in the world could do such a thing, this is the one, to increase one's strength by slaying the wicked. Selwyn thinks, could his son truly grow into a hero like Gallant? May the Seven bless them. House Tarth shall finally rise. He stops himself, gathers his wits, and says he understands. After dinner they must go somewhere. Gallant asks where, since it is already dark outside. His father says they will go verify what he described. Gallant has a fair idea of what he means. They finish the meal, and Brienne returns, riding triumphantly on Claude's hip with a blueberry tart in one fist. The wet nurse takes her up to bed for a story. The other servants are dismissed. His father takes a torch in each hand and leads him through the dark courtyard toward the low tower in the southeast corner of Evenfall Hall. Claude asks mildly where they are going so late. His father tells him only to bring 2 torches. Claude does not ask twice. The man knows his lord's temper. If the lord has not spoken, he does not wish him to know. A steward learns to do more and ask less. Gallant watches the exchange and finds himself admiring his father all over again. Claude is his most trusted assistant, yet he is not telling Claude what is happening, not because he distrusts Claude, but because the fewer people who know a secret, the safer it remains. Lord Selwyn is clear-eyed even in his joy. Gallant had told him just enough of his abilities, and he was absolutely right to do so. The heir too. He may be the heir of Evenfall Hall, but at 8, he cannot mobilize an island. His father can. With a single word, his father takes him out at night to farm prisoners. That is their mission tonight. The low tower in the southeast corner sits over Evenfall Hall's dark dungeon. 2 guards salute as they approach, and one opens the heavy iron door for them. He leads them down a spiral stone staircase, the biting cold rising around them as they descend. The stairs open onto a long corridor, illuminated by torches and iron sconces in the stone walls. From a side room, a tall, lean, slightly stooped one-eyed man emerges wearing a gray robe. His greasy hair is in complete disarray. The guard behind them bows respectfully. He takes back his torch and heads upstairs, leaving them with the one-eyed cousin. Moan from a branch of House Tarth turns to address the boy's noble father. He asks why the Lord brought Gallant here, fearing the dark, dirty dungeon might fright him. The father shakes his head, saying Gallant is not as fragile as Moan thinks. When Gallant greets his uncle, Moan nods back at the boy with surprising softness. Moan was once a very different man. Over a decade ago, during a brutal island raid, his pregnant wife was brutally murdered by pirates, and he has not been right since. Gallant's father took to the field with him and slaughtered that pirate crew to a man. Moan lost his eye in that battle, but though vengeance was served, his mind never recovered. He sank deep into drink, and the Lord, unable to watch his cousin rot, stepped in. He gave Moan this post, torturing prisoners in the dark depths of Evenfall Hall. Some grim pleasure in that work has kept him on his feet all these years. Though unpleasant with the household, he is always gentle with young Gallant. Perhaps because Gallant is his lord's son, or reminds him of his unborn child. The father orders Moan to fetch the Lyseni stowaway from a few days ago. He also wants Fisher, the ruthless man who murdered the merchant Grisha and his entire family. They must be tightly bound. Moan raises an eyebrow but keeps his questions to himself. He disappears into the dungeon and soon returns with the two bound prisoners. Their hands are chained and ankles shackled. One is an extremely pale, thin Lyseni. He has curly mustache hair, a thin frame, and a completely terrified face. The other is heavily built, hook-nosed, around 30 years old, and named Fisher. Fisher had slaughtered the merchant Grisha and his family inside their very home. He stole their hidden treasure, and though he was caught, the wealth was never found. Moan has both men gagged with rags and extra rope to prevent any loud screaming. The Lord asks Moan to step away, calling this matter highly important. He promises to explain the situation to him once they have some free time. Although deeply curious, Moan simply nods and makes his way upstairs to drink. He reminds himself of the Golden Arbor wine that arrived with the recent caravan. Now, with the dungeon completely empty of all other eyes, Gallant draws his sword. The blue glow of Oathkeeper is strikingly visible against the heavy dungeon gloom. In fact, the shadows only seem to make the magical glow look more beautiful. The boy realizes how shrewdly his father has chosen these two test subjects. One is a Lyseni stowaway with no real crimes, the other a vicious murderer. His father is helping him test a rule: does the blade feed on any death? Or only on the blood of the wicked? Suddenly, the Lyseni is kicked to the floor. He lets out a low, terrified moan from his throat, knowing his end is near. Gallant does not waste words. He steps forward and sweeps Oathkeeper across his neck. He avoids using both hands, swinging single-handedly with only 60 or 70% of his full strength. A cyan arc slices the air. The head falls, leaving charred edges, a wisp of smoke, and no blood. As smoke curls upward, he opens his system panel, only to see his judgment points still sitting at 0. He frowns at the empty display. Only two explanations make sense. Either judgment demands a real crime, and the Lyseni did nothing worthy of execution, or the system has a built-in cooldown, requiring a period of rest before the next execution. While he ponders this, a prisoner named Fisher struggles wildly on the ground, his eyes burning. He thrashes violently on the dirty floor, his eyes filled with pure rage and fear. He never expected to be dragged out so late, especially not to face a noble sword. His hidden treasure has not been wrung from him yet, and now his throat faces the blade. There is no time to talk. It did not work, his father says calmly, ignoring the struggles. The young heir shakes his head. Try again then, his father commands, pointing at Fisher. The Lord is not disappointed. Fisher thrashes even harder, glaring like a cornered beast as the boy approaches. He steps forward and raises Oathkeeper, making sure to repeat the exact steps from earlier. He mutters the exact formula he used in the meadow, in the name of the morning. I sentence you to death, he whispers, bringing the heavy blade down with a loud crack. Fisher's head bounces. Seriously, to a legendary sword like Oathkeeper, a human neck is basically cardboard. He opens the panel, strength 3.14, agility 4.1, spirit 12.8. Everything remains unchanged, still 0 judgment points. A sharp headache begins to bloom behind his temples. The execution ritual was perfectly correct. He even spoke the exact words. Fisher was a proven murderer. He was a far worse criminal than the man from this afternoon. Why did nothing happen? There must be a cooldown period. There has to be. It is the only logical explanation. Frankly, it makes perfect sense. If there were no cooldown, a user could easily exploit this system. A warrior with a holy sword and a game panel could easily grind out infinite power. They could become invincible in a single afternoon, slaying even a dragon with one mighty strike. The world cannot allow that. He turns to his father and admits it failed again. The Lord does not suspect his son of lying during dinner. Instead, he calmly asks for his thoughts. Perhaps, the boy suggests, there must be a resting period between uses to recharge. The father thinks quietly for a brief moment, then nods, saying he understands completely. He promises to bring him back tomorrow. The young heir nearly chokes on his own gratitude. Any other noble lord, hearing such a wild tale and seeing no immediate results, would be furious. But his father is different. He is already planning their next experiment together. In his mind, the boy gives his supportive father a silent thumbs up. They climb the stairs and step out into the cool night air. The Lord instructs his guards. When Moan returns, they must help him dispose of the headless bodies left in the dungeon. Walking back to the Great Hall, the young heir returns to his private quarters. He stares at the inactive 0 on his screen, then closes it with a quiet sigh. With his father supporting him, he knows they will uncover how the system works eventually. The next morning, Meister Armin conducts lessons as usual, and young Brienne joins them. His little sister is incredibly well-behaved, lively around her brother, but deeply obedient to the teacher. When the Meister gives her a colorful picture book, she sits down quietly to read. She focuses on the pages with intense, serious attention, once his own lesson concludes. The Meister sits with her, using the pictures to teach her basic common tongue words. The morning quickly fades. By afternoon, the young heir heads back to the Godswood. He trains with Goodwin, practicing swordsmanship and archery. Bow practice is honestly much more fun. Archery actually suits Gallant better than swordsmanship. The basics of aiming and drawing and releasing are already hardwired into his new body, and what he lacks is just the raw practice to turn action into pure instinct. To his surprise, as the training session winds down, he actually starts hitting the absolute center of the target. He quietly pulls up his system panel. His archery skill just rose to 8%. It is a tiny step, but a real one. He wonders if the original Gallant was right on the edge of a breakthrough, or if his own soul boosted his focus. Either way, he is pleased. He bids Goodwin goodbye and hurries back to the Great Hall, where his father is already waiting. A maid hands him a warm towel to wipe the sweat before he follows him. They head down to the southeastern dungeon. The daytime guards are on duty now. Moan is not at the entrance, but wet wails echo from deep inside. Someone is being brutally interrogated. His father calls out for the lead guard. Soon a heavy door clangs open and Moan walks out, wiping blood onto a rag. The Lord orders him to bring out 2 prisoners, just like last time. Without asking a single question, Moan disappears and returns with the bound captives. The first is a rugged old man with a white beard, once a warrior. Now he is just a fisherman who held a bitter grudge against a rival. During a dispute at sea, he kicked the other man straight overboard. But the victim survived the fall, washing up alive on the distant shores. He sailed back to Tarth to demand justice from the Lord. This old fisherman has been locked up waiting for his trial. The second prisoner is a cruel, terrified, middle-aged woman. She had locked her 7-year-old stepdaughter in a pigsty, feeding her slop, and beating her brutally with iron tools until a neighbor finally spoke up. He locked her up, waiting to hang her. Moan kicks her down onto the filthy stone, leaving the old man alone. The old warrior kneels quietly, head held high, as Moan is dismissed. Now watch, Gallant draws Oathkeeper and steps toward the terrified woman. In the name of the morning, he sentences her to death without any hesitation. He swings the heavy blade down in one flawless, terrifying stroke. Her head rolls. He quickly opens his panel. His strength is 3.14, agility 4.1, spirit 12.8. Skills include swordsmanship 3, archery 8, and common tongue 27. Swimming is 29. Legendary bloodlines show Evenstar 3, Targaryen 0. Storm King 1, and right at the bottom, those points. 3 points, his heart actually leaps. His theory was correct. The points come from executing the truly wicked. This cruel child abuser gave him 3 points, while the rapist gave 2. The system clearly rewards the execution of much heavier sins. The kneeling old fisherman stares at him with a deep, confused frown. He never expected the Lord to bring his young son to act as executioner. Nor did he expect the boy to swing a heavy sword so effortlessly. But the old man's gaze does not matter compared to that golden number. His path forward is finally clearing. 3 whole points are his to use. These numbers float before Gallen's eyes, catching him off guard. Yesterday, executing that bald criminal only yielded him 2 points. Yet today, decapitating a woman who tortured her stepdaughter to death earns him 3. Her hidden sins must have been far worse than he knew. And the Holy Sword's judgment weighed her fully. From this, Gallant confirms 2 vital rules at once. A daily cooldown exists for executions, and the points scale with the severity of the sin. This completely changes the game. With the system's basic rules finally figured out, his mood instantly brightens up. Since his father, Lord Selwyn, stands right beside him, he wastes no time. He opens the interface, scanning his stats. Gallant Tarth. No titles, strength 3.14, agility 4.1, spirit 12.8. With swordsmanship at 3% and his Westeros common tongue at 27. His swimming is at 29, right above 3 legendary bloodlines. Evenstar is at 3%, Targaryen at 0, and Storm King at 1. His golden tier legendary weapon, Oathkeeper, is already at maximum quality. Yesterday, he invested his points into strength to test things out. This time he wants to experiment. He taps the small plus icon next to swordsmanship, as 3% becomes 4, washing his mind with clarity. All the swordsmanship lessons Sir Goodwin has been drilling into him. The perfect wrist pivot, the precise line of a parry, and the timing of a thrust suddenly click into place with a sharp clarity he never possessed before. A quick pulse of warmth travels down his right wrist, leaving the joint feeling loose and highly responsive, as if the bones were freshly oiled. So 1 judgment point equals 1% of skill proficiency. He decides against dumping the rest here. After all, skills can be raised through hard practice, while core attributes and rare bloodlines are incredibly difficult to ever raise alone. His gaze shifts down to the bloodline section, tapping the plus icon beside the Targaryen bloodline. Immediately, a low vibration hums through his body. The system deducts a point, unleashing a strange, invisible current within him. Flames seem to erupt right behind his closed eyes, his skin growing burning hot and flushed. He witnesses roaring fires and massive dragons soaring through the skies, absolutely wild. The intense vision hits him like a physical blow, causing him to stumble. And only by planting Oathkeeper into the stone floor does he stay upright. His father rushes over in a panic, shouting his name while pressing a hand to his forehead, only to find the boy burning with fever. The older man later describes seeing a strange orange glow in Gallant's eyes. The fierce rush passes in moments. Gallant leans on his father's arm, nodding. To confirm it worked, Lord Selwyn's noble composure cracks, revealing a massive grin. He exclaims in disbelief that using Oathkeeper to judge the wicked actually makes the wielder stronger, calling it a holy gift from the Seven. He boasts that House Tarth will rise, quickly regaining his noble posture. Lord Selwyn asks if they should proceed, but Gallant shakes his head and objects, explaining that the weapon's incredible power is limited to once per day. They proved this yesterday when a second target caused 0 reaction. Selwyn nods, having suspected as much, and turns to the white-haired captive tied nearby. While Old Shaven, who served Galladon's grandfather in many wars, Lord Selwyn tells him quietly that he originally meant to lock him away for a while, and then let him go, but he heard secrets never meant for his ears, and so Selwyn is sorry. The blade slides forward in one sharp, decisive motion, the cold tip sinking right into the old man's back as a dark crimson flower blooms across his chest. Old Shaven grunts, looking at Galladon, then at his father, and his eyes slowly fade, never understanding what the Lord and his son are actually doing here. Galladon watches his father wipe the steel and sheath it without hesitation, nodding in silent approval. That old prisoner could have been kept alive until tomorrow's public execution. But Lord Selwyn feared a leak in the night. Talk about being ruthless when you have to. They climb back up to the upper level of the dark dungeon, where Moan sits cross-legged in the shadows, nursing a flask of cheap wine. Selwyn asks, Him to dispose of the bodies. Moan, reading what happened from the heavy, apologetic tone in Lord Selwyn's voice, opens his mouth as if to ask something, then snaps it shut. He cannot understand why Lord Selwyn is bringing his 8-year-old son down here so often to kill, yet the boy's eyes look as steady as ever. And Selwyn's cold expression permits no questions. Moan simply nods. They return to the great hall, and after dinner, Galladon plays with young Brienne for a while before heading up to his bedroom. Standing by the window under starlight, he summons his glowing system panel. The Targaryen bloodline sits at 1%, exactly as he expected. He wonders how much further he must push the development before a living dragon will finally recognize him as its master, before that legendary fire immunity manifests. But the red comet is still a long way off, making it pointless to obsess over the dragon bloodline. Outside of dragon writing, the Targaryen blood does not seem to boost raw combat power. Galladon is far more curious about what the blood of the Evenstar and the Storm King bloodlines will eventually reveal as their development climbs, since both belong to him by inheritance and could easily carry hidden traits he has not even guessed at. With one judgment point left, he taps agility, and that familiar warm current returns, gentler this time, less of a burning fire and more of a slow, pleasant loosening through every joint. 4 or 5 seconds later it fades, when he shadow steps around the room, throwing a few light punches and twists. His body feels a hair lighter, a hair quicker, though the change is far less dramatic than the strength jump with agility. At 4.02, a tiny gain, but he is not disappointed. The future is wide open. His father is going to back him with everything, and judgment points will keep coming. By 16 or 17, he will rival Rhaegar, Robert, even Ned, and perhaps catch Arthur Dayne himself. By 30, when the War of the Five Kings begins, he will be the strongest man in the 7 kingdoms, perhaps with a dragon at his command. Galladon of Morn reborn plus a dragon rider. Why should House Tarth not eventually sit the Iron Throne? Lord Selwyn has no idea his son is already daring to look this far ahead. The next morning, he studies with Maester Armin and trains with Sir Godwyn as usual. The knight is openly astonished by the leap in his technique overnight, praising his swordsmanship, strength, and agility, all visibly improved. His father, watching from the edge of the godswood, exchanges a quiet, knowing smile with him. After training, Selwyn takes him down to the back in the dungeon. Moan prepares 2 prisoners and slips away upon their arrival. Talk about professional discretion. He immediately delivers a clean stroke to the first prisoner. Yet the magical panel awards 0 points. Confused, he looks to his father. His father reveals the crime was simple poaching, and the truth clicks instantly. Here, hunting in a lord's woods means death or the wall, but the system disagrees. To the system, poaching is no sin, just a rule made by lords for lords. Because of this, the Holy Sword refuses to react. His father planned this test. He wanted to confirm the rules. Next, the young heir executes the second prisoner. This time, the system panel ticks up by 1 point. He asks what he did. His father rubs his signet ring with a dark look before answering. The crime was incest. The monster banished his own son to take his son's wife. He even fathered a child with her. The boy stares at the severed head. He feels absolute disgust, mixed with a weary horror at the depths of human cruelty. The man deserved his fate. It seems the system views this as a minor sin. That explains the single point. His father asks if the sword accepted the sacrifice. The heir confirms it works, but barely. His father nods, the rule finally proven. Oathkeeper can only judge one sinner daily, and worse sins yield greater power. It makes sense for a divine weapon gifted directly by the 7 themselves. Rewarding the destruction of true wickedness completely fits its holy purpose. From then on, the young lord's life settles into a strict, quiet routine. Mornings studying Valyrian with the Maester, afternoons training with Sir Godwyn, mastering the sword, and spending his evenings executing whatever criminals his father brings. 2 full years fly past like wind. soon, on a clear afternoon. He stands with his father and sister, Brienne, at the Sapphire Port docks. Surrounded by knights, they watch the horizon for sails bearing the Arin Falcon. The vessel comes from the Vale, but their key guest is Robert Baratheon. The eldest Baratheon son is sailing home to Storm's End from the Eyrie. The reason for this long voyage is small, yet carries massive historical weight. Lord Stephen Baratheon and his lady have just welcomed a new baby boy. His name is Renly Baratheon. The young heir turns the name over silently. He knows exactly what kind of green-clad lord this infant will eventually become. Sensing this, he feels time itself tightening around him like a drawn bowstring. After all, the continent of Westeros survives on the tradition of fostering heirs. Noble sons are sent away to be raised in the castles of other lords. They can be wards sealing a crucial alliance or hostages treated like family. Other times, it is a sign of ultimate trust between two powerful houses. They trust another lord to forge their heirs into proper, capable leaders. It holds more weight than marriage.